Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee, Books, and Rain, where we are entering into spooky season with a little bit of coffee and weirdly 100-degree weather outside. Not a big fan, but it's what we do, right? Um, we are already several days into September. Sadly, the weather has still not let up and has not realized we are into pumpkin spice latte season. Now, I still drink black coffee most of the time. I would say a good 98% of the time. There are some days I drink my iced coffee with a little bit of oat milk, a little bit of almond milk, a little bit of spice and pizzazz, sometimes cinnamon, who knows. But most of the time, like I said, 98% of the time, basic black coffee. I'm boring like that, I think. But we're diving into a book that I have just finished reading, and I'm talking yesterday. Not earlier today, just today, because the only thing I did earlier today was go to work. And then I got off work, and it was hot. And so I put on a little tank top, little sports bra thing, and I got in front of a camera. And that's what I did, so I could tell you guys about Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. This book is so incredibly hard-hitting. It is an emotional roller coaster. It makes you so angry, makes you want to fight for these characters, makes you want to yell at characters and all sorts of stuff. The emotions run so raw in this book. I felt so many emotions to want to advocate for these characters, and I think that is absolutely the point of this book. Is it's supposed to make you want to feel the anger and angst and the frustration that these characters are feeling, because sometimes they can't find the words themselves for what they're going through and what they're working through, and it can be very difficult to the main character, his name is Miles. He is autistic as well and has a tough time verbalizing some of his frustrations, some of his anger, some of the things that are on his mind. And so when those sorts of situations comes up, he either holds it really tight in, or he just he has a hard time expressing what he's feeling, which is understandable to some of us in many different ways. But I think we can all kind of commiserate for sometimes being unable to express ourselves. I know personally, I start to kind of cry when I can't fully express myself. I just cry. People call me really sensitive. They call me they say, "Wow, you're really sensitive." Well, it's because I don't know how to express myself to you. I don't know how to make you understand me in a way that would be clear. I don't know how to do it. But this isn't about me. So let me just give you a little bit about the story of Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. Best-selling, award-winning author Andrew Joseph White returns with a queer Appalachian thriller that pulls no punches for teens who see the failures in our world and are pushing for radical change. A gut-wrenching story follows a trans autistic teen who survives an attempted murder only to be drawn into a generational struggle between the rural poor and those who exploit them. On the night Miles Abernathy, 16-year-old socialist and proud West Virginian, comes out as trans to his parents, he sneaks off to a party carrying evidence that may finally turn the tide of the blood feud plaguing Twist Creek. Photos that prove the county's Sheriff Davies was responsible for the so-called accident that injured his dad, killed others, and crushed their grassroots effort to unseat him. The feud began 100 years ago when Miles' great-great-grandfather, Saint Abernathy, incited a miners' rebellion that ended with a public execution at the hands of law enforcement. Now, Miles becomes the feud's latest victim as the sheriff's son and his friends sniff out the evidence, follow him through the woods, and beat him nearly to death. In the hospital, the ghost of a soot-covered man hovers over Miles' bedside, while Sheriff Davies threatens Miles into silence. But when Miles accidentally kills one of the boys who hurt him, he learns of the other folks in Twist Creek who want out from under the sheriff's heel. To free their families from this cycle of cruelty, they're willing to put everything on the line. Is it Miles? A visceral, unabashedly political page-turner that won't let you go until you've reached the end. Compound Fracture is not for the faint of heart, but it is for every reader who is ready to fight for a better world. So I think that's why it hits so hard. I am from small town, middle of nowhere, originally born in Louisiana. I've lived in the South most of my life. So political unrest, political turmoil, political corruption is not new to me. But to see it so blatantly on page is definitely something so incredibly frustrating. My current day job is one where I'm happy to say gets to see a lot of hopefully justice done, and I'm kind of proud that it does. How I'm not kind of one of the people kind of on the forefront of that, but it gets done, and I'm very happy to say that my coworkers do good work. But to be able to see that this small Appalachian community is pulled apart and like constantly at odds with each other, and people so scared of each other because of this one particular sheriff it was so frustrating for most of the book, because I'm like, he's one man and this entire community is just absolutely terrified of him, even to the point that his son is able to go around and do these things, and the sheriff just you don't remember anything, do you? And knowing that if Miles, who's laying in the hospital bed with broken facial bones, like internal bleeding, all this sort of stuff, like barely survived, it's a threat when the sheriff comes in and actually says you don't remember anything, because Miles learns later that the sheriff actually saw the video of Miles being brutally beaten up by the sheriff's son, and whether the sheriff laughed about it or not, like, the sheriff saw and knows what happened. And so it's just so incredibly frustrating, because the paperwork or the photos that Miles has is fairly damning evidence of how corrupt and how twisted the sheriff actually is with regards to the length he will go to protect himself, and what he has done in the past in order to protect himself. And so Miles had gotten this together and had given it to someone, and then was brutally beaten. So that person was too scared to use it. Now Miles is out of the hospital and is recovering, and is now almost willing to try to do it again, like to give this evidence to someone else, with the hopes that someone else will take down the sheriff again, to use their voice to try to kind of confront the sheriff in some sort of meaningful way, that the community can rally and say, look, we're not afraid of you anymore. We know that you are a bad guy, that you are a bad person, that you are the reason this community is as bad as it is. Now, I'm not saying that Miles is innocent in a lot of different ways, but for the most part, they are. Now, did the accident happen that another boy got killed? Yes. Should they have done a lot of things different? Yes, absolutely. And so there is some fault to be had there. Should they have not brought in their friend Cooper to assist them with covering that up? No, of course not. Like, that's a whole nother basket of crazy that we just don't want to work with. Like, we do not, like, that should not have been the way that we went with this. It's not That's not sound mind and reasoning. But of course, with that sort of sheriff in town, and knowing that that kid that just accidentally fell and hit his head and passed away was the sheriff's son's best friend, I mean, you were definitely going to probably not make it through the night had the sheriff found out, I'm certain. So there's a lot of very intense points in this book. There's a lot of very contentious conversations that probably need to be had and are had throughout this book. But in so many ways, it was such a good book, such an incredibly it didn't pull its punches. It did not hold back on what it was trying to say. And yeah, it can absolutely be kind of one of those, it could be a sore subject for a lot of people. It can be a point of argument for a lot of people. There can be some people who may not look at this book in a very positive light at all. But that's really the beauty of being able to write and read books like this, is there are going to be books that need to start conversations. And I'm talking civil conversations. I'm not talking yelling, screaming, shouting at each other conversations. We're not trying to be up in arms with conversations about this. But in this book, they are certainly trying to fight for what they believe is right. And what they believe is right is that Sheriff Davies has held the power for far too long. He has pretty much beaten this community into submission. He has scared everyone into hiding who they are. He won't, he's shamed people. He has blamed people for things he's done. Some people who didn't do things, he's made them pretty much suffer. And people who didn't cause accidents were made to believe and to suffer as though they did cause accidents. And he was the one who maybe should have, he was the one who should have taken the blame when it was his fault. So justice was never done. And that, I think that's where the conversation should lead in this book, is maybe there's no right way to get justice in this book. There's no right way to go about it, maybe, but they're trying their best with the resources they have and the people who are willing to fight for it. And maybe it's not 100% above water, but they're willing to do it. They're willing to put their lives on the line. They're willing to know the consequence is to be beaten nearly to death and still fight for what they think is right. And again, it's hard. It's gut-wrenching. It is a blow, but it really makes you think, wow, they are determined to make sure that people after them don't have to suffer what they've suffered. And it's important. It's an important conversation. So honestly, it's just a really good book. It's a powerful book. I can't wait to read Hell Followed With Us, which is another book by this writer, which follows another transgendered character, but it's a little more, I think, science fiction based, because this one was a little more just what I would call general fiction. But this one didn't have any kind of science fiction-y, fantasy, surreal elements to it that I could tell, other than a ghost. There was a ghost from the past, Saint Abernathy, that kind of showed up almost to I don't want to lead Miles, but to kind of be a sort of guide, kind of, to Miles. Whereas in Hell Followed With Us, which is Andrew Joseph White's first book that I can tell, that one seems to be a little bit more sci-fi or a little bit more fantasy based, because it is more apocalyptic in nature. And so I'm very interested to see what sort of social commentary it may contain as well. So this month, for the month of September, we will be getting 2 books by this writer, and I can't wait so we can compare once I finish reading that book, and we will come back to the table and talk about it. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please let me know if this is a book that you would be interested in, but you should be able to find it, I believe, as of September 3rd. I'm going to look real quick on my tablet that I've got right here. I was making sure that I read you guys September 3rd. I was just making sure I had that date right. And it is about 384 pages, so it can be a little bit long, but like I said, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of stuff going on. So I think it's going to go pretty quickly for you guys. It went pretty quickly for me, but there are some very intense moments that may make you want to pause. That are going to feel kind of heavy. So if those are some things that are going to be kind of triggering for you, take your time. And if it's not something that you may feel is right for you right now, then just allow yourself to come back to it if and when it feels right for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next page. Have a great one. Bye.